Hello, everybody. Thank you for dialing in tonight and joining this hour. Hopefully, we'll make it worth your while. I'm fully aware there are athletics clubs and run clubs who have dialed in. So anything that we talk about and that we share, by all means, if there's something you want a little more specifically answered with regards to a run club as opposed to an athletics club, then feel free to ask. I have run clubs before as well. So I'm here presenting about our club. I'm very aware that every club is very different. Every scenario is different. Any questions you do have, we'll try and respond to it appropriately. And if we haven't got the information to hand, we'll source whatever we can from there. But firstly, I thought it would be useful to just introduce myself. I've always run. I've always done multi-sports at school. As you can see, a few dated photos there go back a long way. I ended up doing a sports science degree at Carnegie in Leeds. I then did some personal training. I've done some run clubs, and then I supported, as my children grew, some local community athletics clubs, and one in particular I stayed with for a good number of years, and wanted to develop on then from not just working with minors, the 6 and 7 year olds, but to working in an athletics club. So I offered support to a local club, but wasn't really involved. Desperate to coach, so I decided that if I wanted to coach, maybe I would start my own athletics club, and I did so in September 2011, and with the help and support of many coaches from within England athletics who were friends at the time. I thought if I couldn't make it work in the run-up to the Olympics of 2012, it probably wasn't going to work at all. Again, England athletics were very supportive with triathletics days, which were run earlier on in 2012. Some of you may have even run your own, and that helped develop and grow the club from there. I wanted to build something that was fun and supportive and new, that allowed children to experience every single event of track and field, so they could have a go at all events, whatever their age, and whether they wanted to compete or not. And the intention was to build an 8 to an 11-year-old club and possibly feed into the more established clubs locally. And so I started that club with that in mind. It has grown in itself and developed with the athletes, which I'll talk about later. But the main springboard that meant I could start this club with a little more confidence was meeting the creator of Athletics 365, Scott Grace, at Lee Valley at a coaching conference in 2010. And he was promoting his 365 to England athletics at the time. And when I looked at it, it seemed that he'd built me a curriculum for a club, an outline and a structure. So it meant I'd got a working handbook for coaches and for myself to work on the fundamentals for young athletes in every event. So I advertised, promoted it. And I thought, as I said, if in 2012 I couldn't make it happen, it probably wasn't possible in the way I wanted to make it happen. So we started in September 2011, and we were called Leamington 365. I started with just 8 athletes on the first night, 4 coaches and sports leaders, most of whom were family and members, family friends. And from the very first start night of the club, there was a payment up front from athletes or parents of athletes, which helped immensely in being able to fund back into the club to grow it further. So it was an 8 to 11-year-old club. By the end of the first 9 to 10 months, we'd got 48 members, and that's July 2012. As you can see, as of September 2019, we have a significant improvement to 411 athletes, now paying £70 a term. I was asked to look at the retention levels that we have within our club, which are now 6 to 18-year-olds. Last year's retention was actually, surprised me, it was 93%, only 26 kids left the club, which every single one you wonder why and what you could do differently, but I think our coaches can pat themselves on the back for doing something right. Those numbers do speak volumes. What changed after being Leamington 365 was we decided that we actually needed to give children a chance of competition, because we'd set up as almost a community club to introduce multi-event athletics, but people were asking about competition. So in doing so, we needed to affiliate with England Athletics, which we did a couple of years later. And we dipped our toe in the water of Sports Hall, in 2013 to start with, but then as an affiliated club more so. And as you can see, cross country, we started a couple of years ago. Track and field with Heart of England League. We joined in Division 4, we've done to Division 3 the next year. We've just found out we've gone up to Division 2, so that's going to be a challenging year. But there's lots of things about our club that are slightly different. Competition wasn't a big feature to start with, but I do think the competitive aspect and running competition for a club is a huge part of the organisation of a club. Delivery and coaching is one arm, and then the organisation of competition is another, which was why we very much delayed it, because we're learning how to involve kids in athletics and what competitions there are out there, either for affiliated and non-affiliated athletes, and also as individuals and for teams. So we're learning that as we go. But the older athletes now are starting to affiliate, and I had a quick look at the numbers this evening. Of that 411 athletes we have currently on our books, only 254 of them are 10-year-old and upwards, which is probably the standard age that you start to affiliate children for athletics and cross country. Only 33% of our 10-year-olds plus actually are affiliated members, which indicates what percentage of our club actually compete and what don't, and yet our retention is high. So looking at those numbers, again, you may be able to extrapolate some aspect from that, but if you jump to the next slide, sorry. If we look at maybe one of the things we think that has affected our retention, it's our club philosophy, which we actually devised in allegiance with England Athletics on a national coach development weekend, meeting a lady called Jane Duda, who talked to us all about motivation theory. And principally, it was all about motivating the individual to measure and assess themselves and not necessarily look outside of their own performances to compare themselves against others and thinking, well, if I'm entering this race, I've only done well if I come third and make podium, or, you know, if I don't make top 10, then I'm no good, or I'm no good if I don't beat my best mate who's the same age as me in my school. It's more about looking at what motivates the child to be competitive with themselves. So that task motivation theory, I would definitely advocate that you go and have a look at. Our club philosophy thereof is play, practice, perform. So come and have a go, see which events you like, whether you're 6 or 16 and new to athletics, have a go at all the events. Obviously, if you want to get better at something you're enjoying, then practice it, train hard. And the perform aspect for us is in measuring yourself. So at 8 years of age, we start to apply the 365 curriculum, as I would call it, and we will assess children for their level of proficiency in the events, but not on performing. We don't measure how far they threw a howler, we assess how well they threw it, because everybody, as you know, is going to grow differently, and if we can get the fundamentals right, then the mechanics of how they grow will be applied to a good technique, and that's what we base our delivery of coaching on. So even our 8 to 13-year-olds all do 365 and are given a certificate at the end of the year for their level of proficiency. So they're very much focusing on self, not on the performance aspect. We do have children, athletes and parents who want to compete. So that obviously performing might be competition, but we don't enforce that. We don't pressurize that. And we think a lot of that contributes to the retention levels of our club. So I'm not sure what percentage of athletes you might have in your club that are competing and affiliated, but it's certainly not something, it's not a mindset that we would instill in our younger athletes. And if ever they do their first competition, if they're selected for an under 11s or under 13s, we tell the parents and we tell the athletes, we will select you because it's an opportunity to learn about competition and learn about competing, not because we want you to win. So we will put 8-year-olds into our sports hall team knowing and telling them, you're not going to win this, you're learning and practicing competition. So a lot of our approach to competition is about testing yourself, even in the competitive environment. And again, with competition, we'll talk to teenagers who are competing about the plateauing effect during their growing years, and not to expect to always be getting PBs every year, and that even plateauing or even dipping off your own performances is something you will expect. So it's about resilience, about retention, and staying with the sport until hopefully they've gone through all those growth issues and will enjoy competing and stay in the sport. So how did we grow our team from 2011 to 2019? We did it in a couple of ways. We looked at the coaching aspect and who could support us from a parent's point of view. So at the Triathletics Day we ran, whilst we invited kids in to have a go, we asked parents if they were interested in supporting. And 2 or 3 parents that night who are still with us came because their kids enjoyed the athletics. So they signed a self-declaration form and observed and just followed some coaches, got interested in it. And then we said, well, if you want to do a qualification course, let's put you on and you can still shadow and mentor. And when you feel ready, we'll give you a group. So asking parents to help coach was one of the ways that we've invited people in. We've advertised on the England Athletics website, as well as a national website called joininuk.org, where you can advertise for positions, whether it's in coaching or in admin or officiating, and you can fully explain what it is you're hoping that individual can do to support your club. And you can put that link in an email to parents and say, link here if you're interested in supporting us. So that's been a useful avenue for letting people know we have vacancies to support our club in various veins, whether, as I say, it's in admin or in website design or in coaching itself, or in simply serving tea and cakes at events that we run. Because I was a personal trainer and also delivering in schools, I linked with other PE teachers or PTs, and the growing word of mouth became that if you're doing personal training, you could also get a coaching qualification with this particular club, who'd then give you ask you to join part of their coaching team to support the athletics club. Personal trainers understand movement mechanics, they understand periodization, they understand overload and progression. So you've already got somebody who understands the theory of acquiring a skill and improving performance. So it's a useful avenue to market to personal trainers in various gyms, who often are very individually based. They're one-on-one sessions, and the idea of working in a coaching team and working with groups of athletes is a really different way for them to deliver. So it's quite exciting for them to be as well a personal trainer one-on-one, but also delivering in a team and with groups. A large percentage of our coaches have come from being athletes, and although we're only 8 years old as a club, 8 or 9 years old, 13 of the 28 members of our existing coaching team are athletes, from prior athletes and now coaches, or existing athletes who are also coaches. So they will coach our junior club at the earlier session and then stay on in the evening. They will coach the earlier session and then stay on in the evening and train as an athlete. So that's been very useful. They've understood 365, they've seen the ethos of the club, and then they've also been given the opportunity to do a leading athletics qualification at Sports Lead, and then they've moved on to do a coaching qualification. Hi, Barnaby, you ask if all our coaches are paid. No, not all of them, and we give people that option. So many of the parents have come into as volunteers, as they have from the Join in UK. Those that are volunteers stay as volunteers, and if they're a parent, their children have access to the club for free and they get kit for free. So there are perks for volunteer parents. And for those athletes who then moved into being like leaders and then into coaches, they have become self-employed sports coaches. So we help them learn how to do self-employment, sign up with HMRC. That looks great on a CV for a 17, 18-year-old who's already self-employed, understanding income expenditure, understanding how to write invoices. And it's a very empowering position for a 17, 18-year-old to be in. A couple of those 18-year-olds haven't gone to university, so they've stayed on and are now level 2s and working within club. So we do accept that a lot of our 16, 17, 18-year-olds are those who've come through 365, understood the ethos and can deliver to our club curriculum, as it were, with 365, and that we're going to lose them because they're going to go to university. But a lot of those will come back at Christmas or over the summer and will cover sessions because they know how it works. They're part of the team and then will remain part of the team. And if there's a session where we haven't got cover, they'll be given information about whether they want to cover that particular session and still remain as a paid coach. I have got some more information coming up on paid coaches, Barnaby. That's on our next slide, actually. But just to continue how else we've got coaches, it's word of mouth. People have come to ask us, in particular personal trainers, run club coaches, have come and said, how can I be involved in your team? So that's how we've got coaches, but you all very much well know that the organisation of a club is huge. So at the moment, our club has got 28 coaches in all, ranging from 16-year-olds to 70-year-olds. 13 of those, as I said, are actually existing athletes who are also coaches. So we've got 28 on our coaching team. And that includes we've also got sports leaders as well, who aren't on the coaching team, but they're on our WhatsApp groups so that they're informed about what's going on with the coaching. But the coach support, we include the organisation of team management for competitions, sending out emails to parents about what's going on at club, organising with coaches what their sessions are and where they'll be on the track, what group they've got, because they'll know every group they have. They'll have a register for that group and they'll know what they're delivering for that whole half term. Each night there'll be 2 parts to the night. So a lot of the organisation of club, it comes under admin. So we emailed parents and said, who's great at Excel spreadsheets to organise my registers? Who's great at web design? Can you help me with my web design? Is there anybody out there who wants to write emails for us? So we actually emailed our parents and said, look, the club needs support in various different ways. How can you help? So not just in coaching, but also specific club issues we needed support with. We had somebody who was quite good with admin and in PayPal and collection of fees and funds. So they then helped our web designer organise how to help us with a particular aspect of our online membership, which I will be coming to later on in the webinar. So we asked, and we're honest enough, that the organisation of our club is a large percentage of our club funds, and so we pay for that. We pay an hourly rate for that. So here come the stats that you're probably interested in knowing. Our accounts from 1st of September 2018 to 31st of August 2019 are on this next slide. So there's a number of things in the key below you can see haven't got any numbers to them, but are a percentage of our expenditure of club funds. The funds come from the subs the kids pay every term. So you can see our track hours there. We pay our sports leaders £6 per hour. Sometimes sessions are an hour and a half long, so we pay them on an hourly rate. If you're level 1, you might be under 18 or over 18. You might have been with us for 6 months or 3 years. So we do have a gradual payment scheme that reflects your experience and your age. An event specialist coach is somebody who's done one of the modules on the Athletics Hub in addition to their level 2 qualification, and might be delivering jump-specific sessions weekly or hurdle sessions weekly. So that is them organising themselves, organising their own planning and progression for their athletes, and planning individual training programs maybe for those athletes. So that is them delivering a session without it being a club session. So that's a little bit more admin for them. And as you can see, we pay admin at £11 an hour. So that might be email communications, it might be organising the session planning. Again, all this is coming later in the webinar, so you'll get some more information on really what it is we are organising that takes up 26% of our admin costs. All our admin, our coaches, is 46% of our entire income, and the track fees are in there. So you can see that in running a club, all the funds that come in goes on paying for the people who deliver it, the people who organise it, and where we deliver it. And I would ask you if you think there's anything else that we should be putting those funds towards, but I don't think it's unreasonable in any organisation or business and I know that might seem like a difficult word to accept, but any business that those who deliver and support the running of it, the place where you deliver it, and the background work to make it all happen are a large percentage of the overall income. Anybody got any questions on that slide? Okay, Barney, what about competition expenses, coaches to YDL? And they're huge for us. Okay, we have funds that come in. We are required to pay for sports hall, we're required to pay for cross country, and we're required to pay to the Heart of England League. So we pay those. And as a limited company, yes, we're a limited company, we actually pay we invoice every athlete that attends sports hall and attends cross country £5 per time that they attend. And because we have to organise the teams, a lot of time goes into that. We have to send a team manager. We had to buy gazebos. When we go to cross country, we take coffee and tea and a dispenser and cake, and we make sure that the numbers are there, the spare vests. So a lot of prep and organisation, as I'm fully aware, I'm preaching to the converted here, goes into supporting the competition aspect of a club. Our parents have no issue with paying £5 for having attended an evening of sports hall where their kid is placed into an event, taken through warm-ups and looked after all evening to make sure that they get a great competition experience. When they go to cross country, I will do a warm-up with each group. We'll have a coach that then takes them to the start line, removes all the kit from at the very last minute, and then we'll have supporters around the course. There's a lot of effort goes into that. I know you're all doing it. What you might not be doing is charging those athletes for each time they attend a competition. Okay, we've got a question here that says the fees we charge are much more than most clubs would recommend. Other clubs charge more, as your fees are cheaper than most sports. So I think you recommend other clubs charge more? I wouldn't recommend you charge more. I think the equations we use could be transferred possibly to anywhere in the country, in the sense that, yes, we charge £70 here because we have track fees and we pay the coaches. That rate, you don't necessarily need to pay the coaches that rate. You might not have track hire of that charge. You might be allowed your track for a cheaper amount because you're an established club there. So I think the equations of what we do, so that gradual increment of payment for a more experienced coach, you could start with your own benchmark of what you pay a sports leader and work it from there. We like to pay over the minimum wage. Because of the hours we expect. It's not a standard hourly job. We expect that people support and commit to quite a random hour and unsociable hours at some occasions. So I don't think our costs need to be carried over, but looking at that circle, that pie chart, I think you might find that if you paid your coaches £10 an hour and charged £3 per session, that equation there might look similar because of the amount that you're charging and for the output. Would you agree with that, Barney? I think the fact we pay admin might surprise most of you. Most clubs, the coaches are volunteers. God bless them. God bless them. But what I wanted to build was something I knew I could sustain. As a degree qualified, coaching qualified, mother of 4, I could not possibly justify giving this much time a week, and it's about 40 hours a week all in all, 30 to 40 at this time of year, and not have an income from it. So I would have to go and get, as I used to say, a proper job. I would say it's taken 6 years, 7 years for me to justify this as a role that I now have a full-time job with an income that means I feel valued for what I deliver, and I would argue that from the surveys we give to our parents, they would say they're getting value from the club. So whilst most clubs are run on volunteers, I would question whether that is a sustainable model. One of the issues we don't have with our club that many clubs have is we don't have an issue finding coaches. When we have a session that is freed up because a coach this evening, in fact, put on the WhatsApp group, I can't make tomorrow at 6:30 with the juniors. Could anybody cover my session, please? We do a first come, first serve on that WhatsApp group. So any coach level of that level they're a level 1 and wants to cover that session, they will just answer on the WhatsApp, yes, I can make that. And it's covered usually within 15 minutes and I'm not even involved because I have coaches who are being paid. So it's not that this works for everybody. And I'm not saying that everybody should be paid. I never profess that every coach should be paid. What I'm saying is this is the model we work with and it works for us.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to jump in for 1 second because we've had a comment about an issue with moving a voluntary club to becoming a limited company. I don't want to get into detail now. What I will say, it's Malcolm who's asked that question. I will send some information about how we've worked with other clubs to support them to do that with Muckle, who are our lawyers who we use. They can provide that advice, that guidance, almost give some off-the-shelf advice, but at the same time, it can be more bespoke. And they've also got different models, different legal structures that clubs can look at. So I'll send some of that information as well, just so that you can have a look at the different options. But I'm conscious that we've talked a bit about payment, and it is an interesting topic, but I think Rachel probably wants to just move on to the next slide. But again, if we get to the end and people have got other questions on that particular topic and subject, then we will come back to it.
The reason we initially, if I can just cover that, the reason we initially went limited was to protect my committee members from liability. That was our initial reason to become a limited company. I think a lot of sports companies do it. The other club on the same track as me has recently, 2.5 years ago, become a limited company as well, and they run with volunteers. So I don't think having paid or volunteer coaches dictates whether your club can be a limited company, but Muckle and Chris can certainly help you with that. So I'd come back to them at a later stage on that. I hope that's okay, both Malcolm and Barnaby. Okay, so we're going to move on to have a look at how we build the teamwork of what we have at LAA. I think building teamwork happens if you know you're supported in the work you do by the others who are around you. And a typical example I've just explained about the WhatsApp. If you're the only person delivering that 6 o'clock junior class, and when you're not there because your child's ill or you've got a parents' evening, or that's quite a pressure. We share all our athletes with all our coaches, so there's a lot of movement between it. The flip side of that is you might not get that affinity with an athlete or that continuity, but we actually think it benefits the team really well. And we also have lots of socials for our coaches outside of club, because that's when you get to know each other better. And it's very hard to grab that time before a session or after a session to get to know people and what really interests them and how you get along more. So we have, after awards night, we'll have a meal out. We've got our Christmas evening out coming up this Friday, and we'll have summer evenings out where we'll go out for a meal. The sports leaders are sent either to the beach for co-steering, or they're sent to Thorpe Park for the day. So they always have something organised for them as well that keeps them as a team and a team unit. I think the young coaches are very much connected in that regard with moving into becoming coaches as well, because they see the stepping stones between a leader and a coaching assistant. We have quite a high female retention in our club because we have a lot of female coaches. But I did check the stats on our team athletics, our team group being the 11-year-olds plus, and actually our female retention is 39% to 61% male. I thought it would be slightly more evened out. It's not too dissimilar in our younger groups. We've got 41% females to 59% male. Considering we've got quite a female-based coaching group, I thought that would be more female-based, but our retention of females is higher. We lose 60, anybody who leaves the club is 60% more likely to be male than they are females. So that's something we need to address in looking at our coaching delivery. But we deliver 365, which means it's multi-event. So that means every coach has to know how to deliver long jump, hurdles, shot put, javelin, relay. You've got to be very multi-event delivery based. So I think the 365 booklet helps upskill you with that. You'll learn all the fundamentals. The flip side of that is that that's a lot of information for a new coach to learn. So we share our ideas. We have games that we'll make cards of, and we'll say, look, if you're doing high jump tonight, this is a game we played. And so everybody will very much share things that worked and didn't work. And because you've got to know multi-event, I might go over to somebody and say, gosh, I don't know shot put as well as I know hurdles. What do you know about shot put? So we're very honest about the fact that we're deficient in knowledge in some areas of our delivery. The 365 booklet helps massively with that. The ideas of how to use that and make it into a practical situation, athletes will share with each other. So as I said, we organize our coaching groups into ratios according to the 365, the England Athletics ratio levels as much as we can. That means we rarely have a coaching assistant with more than 12 junior athletes. 16 at max, and they'll have a sports leader with them as well. It means that if you're a coaching level 1 delivering to juniors, you've got this group this term, and you might have a different group another term. So you rotate around the groups possibly, just for organizational purposes. We might have a teen athlete who's got A levels later on in the summer, so she can't do the juniors, so somebody else will move in to do it. It also means that it doesn't get too cliquey. Nobody gets too much ownership of a group of athletes or a particular event within their track and field. So we all share our athletes and we share the delivery. And as I say, if you are not sure what to do, we ask each other and we share ideas so that we're all delivering to the same level. And again, because we work from 365, we all know what we're delivering, the fundamentals we're working on, the objectives we're looking at. So it's quite a standardized delivery from a different coach even. They just come with their own ideas on how to, which I'm more than happy for any coach to do. So that membership and that work behind the scenes. We've got this web designer who's now got us online membership on our homepage. And I've asked him if he's worked it out for us, he's put it into our WordPress website. He's more than happy, and I'm more than happy to share how he's done it with us and what he's put in place with you guys if you're thinking about doing online membership. That means somebody goes onto our website, or they've called me and I say, go to join us on the website. They click on join us and they sign up all their details there and then straight into the website, and it drops into a package called Zero. So we then email them and say, thanks for joining. Here's the invoice for this coming term. If you can pay it, that'd be great. And when they turn up, they'll get a little welcome pack. So we've done a booklet that is essentially the website in a booklet. So parents who are not so conversant with websites or may not even go to it have just got it to hand anyway. So they'll then be invoiced for the upcoming term. And every first email will say, if you don't enjoy the first session, you're fully refunded, because everybody wants a trial. But if we do a trial, if we do Zero and somebody puts all their details in, when that athlete arrives, whether they've paid the invoice or not doesn't matter. But I have their medical and behavioural details and their emergency contact numbers. So immediately, from having joined us, I can go to an app on my phone, and any issues, I can look it up and know that that child can have a parent contacted for any reason. And so that's been really useful. The other great thing about invoicing is if they haven't paid it up front, that's fine. But Zero will keep invoicing them until it is paid. So you don't have to keep going back and checking or reminding or nagging parents. It does it automatically. It also means you don't miss parents. You don't miss people out from checks and cash. The upfront payment, we thought we were doing very well with by checking all our checks and cashes. Once we put Zero in, we realised we were missing out between £3,500 and £5,000 a year on payments from parents. That wasn't them being sneaky and trying to come in without paying. It was just the sheer volume of admin required to chase it. And you didn't want to nag a parent if they'd said they'd given you a check and then admit you'd lost it. So it's professionalized it. It's meant we've got more funds coming in to pay for more coach education, more resources, and to build the club better. We pay no dividends, we pay no profits. Everything goes back into feeding the club. So Zero sits between the website joiners. They type it all in, it goes into Zero. Zero links with our bank account. And as I say, the invoices then pay from there. And parents have had no issue with it. But as I say, we've done the planning. I know where every kid's going to be every half an hour across the half term, where on the track, what they're delivering, and with which coach they will be. And those funds mean that if 3 kids turn up instead of 17, because it's -2, we've still been paid for the admin time and the effort of planning it. And I don't think that's unreasonable to ask. Personal data is stored on R0. It's not stored within the website at all. It's stored within Xero. Anybody who has access to that Xero information has to sign something called a confidentiality agreement, which means they will not share it, will not access it, or use it for any other purpose. That's then given to my welfare officer, who has a copy of that signed agreement. That's something we devised through Muckle. So again, go back to Chris on that. Go back to Muckle, who support England Athletics on the legalities and the GDPR of running your club. But nobody's allowed access to Xero unless they have signed that. There's only actually 3 people in the club that have access to that. And is that okay? Has that answered that question, Malcolm? So a lot of membership is about communication with parents. So weekly, we will send out a 3 things Xero. The 3 things Xero email just to make sure that we as coaches and as a club focus on 3 things that are important that week to remind parents, because everybody's overloaded. It might be that the same thing appears next week, but it's not just at the top of the list of 3 things, it's moved down a bit. So that 3 things email has been fabulous at making sure parents are communicated with. The Teamwork app, we've just started using this October. It's been fantastic at cutting down the emails to chase parents to say, are you coming to cross country? Are you coming to cross country? You know, which cross country event are you coming to? So the Teamwork app, by all means, it's been fantastic. You export all the details from the Teamwork app as to who's coming. If you are the admin on that, and you've got your ownership of the admin of that, and again, only 2 people in our club have that because emails appear, you can export all the emails, send everybody who's said, yes, I'm available and can come, 1 email, having exported all the emails off the Teamwork app to just those parents. So you're not firing something about cross-country to a whole lot of people in your club who are not coming to cross-country. Only those who've said, yes, I'm going to sign up to cross-country that week will get that email. So it's streamlined it, and it's made it much better for us. And if parents say, oh, I can make the sports hall, we just tell them, go to the Teamwork app and let me know, and we'll come back to you and let you know where you are on the team. So that's been really useful. If you want some help on that, then the events organizer for my club would be the lady I'd direct you to. So if you want to work out how to go through Teamwork app and set it up, I'll link you with the lady in my club who did it for us. So only you as an admin can see all the details. The parents who signed up just see if Johnny and Julie and Claire and Melissa are all going, so we'll go as well. So they'll see the other kids that are joined up. And when anybody leaves our club, we send them a sorry you're leaving email, and we send them an exit survey. So we have data on why they left and what the issues are we personally need to address, because if you've got issues within your club you're not aware of, need addressing, how are you going to fix them? So we have got an exit email on that we send out. It was just done through SurveyMonkey, and it seems that we get quite a good, they don't have to reply to it, but they do.
We did have another question in there about how many athletes or groups are on the track in a normal session, but I'm pretty sure that's coming up later on. So if you can hang fire, Barnaby, we will cover that. Yeah,
we're only on a Tuesday, Monday and a Wednesday night, and we have a smattering of kids on a Saturday morning. That's really a very simple one to deliver. But here's the planning. This is what we need to do. I've already mentioned staffing. We use a WhatsApp group. So if there's any changes, if it's totally iced up and we've got to go to a default session, as it were, when it's really icy and dangerous, coaches will know ahead of the session. Every group has a register. So we might know that there's 64 juniors coming to the track tonight, but Coach Lauren will get this group, Coach Michelle will get that group, and Coach Stan will get this group, and that's their group for that half term. And they stick to the ratios. The FPR there is we're trying to move away from paper registers, and we're going to be introducing in the new year fingerprint recognition. But as you can imagine, Malcolm, that's a lovely GDPR issue. So we've got to make sure we nip and tuck who has given us approval for fingerprint recognition on a device. That's one of our goals for next year. And the planning of sessions, So you say how many groups are on the track. On some nights in the evening at 6:30 till 8 standard time, there's 11 different groups rolling around that track. And a run club joins as well with another 50 adult runners. So we plan our coaching. And as you can see, we've got warm-up groups there. We've got a warm-up plan for winter for our juniors and a warm-up for our teens. Now, whilst coaches are given these warm-ups, there's a few reasons why. One is that if you rock up late and you're just brain dead from work, you've got something to work off. They're also age-related. They're also ramp organised, so they're very much designed towards how we should be warming kids up. But it also means I know how long it's going to take for a warm-up to take place, which means that I know somebody's going to move to their first session of the night in a different part of the track. So they're assigned events to do each week, and they're assigned an area on the track because it's so crowded. So if it says you're doing 200-metre relay wraparounds in lane 5, 6, and 7, only use lanes 5 and 6 and 7 because there's somebody else in the other ones at that time. So it's very much time. That takes a lot of planning. So that's the planning that goes on behind it. And you can imagine with 411 in the club, that's a lot of admin. And here are the numbers. So we work on a Monday, Wednesday, and a Saturday. There's not many on the Saturday, as you can see. Park run, rugby, and football probably take all the kids then. We started with just Monday night at 6:30, and we've moved to doing an early and a late session both on Mondays and Wednesdays. So the after-school club and the evening club, as it were. But the teens only train in the evening. So those are the numbers that we have coming at present. So you can imagine when we've got juniors, under 13s, and teens on a track on Monday evening, that is a lot to organise and make sure that. My goal personally as a coach and head coach this year is if I have anybody shout track out loud in the middle of a session, I got my planning wrong, because that means somebody's in the way where they shouldn't be. So I've only had it shouted once so far this last 4 weeks, which I'm quite proud of. Usually there's quite a few shouts going on with other clubs down there, but it's working. And the only reason I put these little plans in to show you what our minis, juniors and teens are doing is just to show you that we're not doing anything different to you. We're not doing athletics any differently. I'm sure you do shuttle runs. I'm sure you do Indian fouls around the track and you go hill training. So our minis, they do little conditioning mini circuit exercises. So that's just a bit of a taster of what the minis might do. The juniors doesn't look a whole lot different. Again, there's some hurdling in there and conditioning. There might be a bit of med ball practice to getting used to it and the idea of it. You can see there's locations on the track there, so each coach knows their warm-up is in the same location each week. So if kids are late, they know where to go with their coach. But each week they have to move around. That's to give that variety, but also to keep the safety involved with their people not overlapping on the track. And again, even in the teen session, part of our teen session this term has been on testing. So although, as I said, 67% of our teen academy don't compete, or our upper age groups don't compete, we've still done some bleep tests and press-up tests, and we've scored them all. And we're going to measure this again in March to see if they've improved. If they're not competing, but they're coming for fitness, well, shouldn't we be measuring if they're getting fitter? Because I've written the planning for the team sprints and endurance. So if they're not getting fitter, my planning's not working. So it's not only testing them, it's testing our planning as well. So I'm sure you do flying 30s, and I'm sure you do hill training. Plyos there is, bounding and leaping over hurdles. It's plyometric stuff. Tabata is just a version of doing conditioning all the way down the 100 meters every 10 meters. So this isn't rocket science. I'm not inventing athletics. We're just organizing it differently and probably come with a slightly different ethos to some clubs. I'll rattle through our teen academy. It's about social groups. The kids decided who they wanted to train with, and then we assigned them a coach to go with that group. They choose whether they do speed or endurance, and there's a plan across the half term for the speed groups that's progressive and endurance, and they're allowed to move between. Again, they're assigned to an area of the track. That's a logistics thing, as you can hear. Timed warm-ups and timed session deliveries. Most speed and endurance sessions will have finished by about 7:25, because then they will move at this time of year to either that plyometric, the hill training, or the Tabata. And in the summer, they'll have finished speed or endurance, and they'll move to either hurdles, high jump, javelin, long jump. They will rotate around the events. So they get that variety. If you're a competing athlete and affiliated, you can choose to go to hurdles every single time if you want, because you want to perform at that. If an athlete comes down and gets injured, or has come with an injury from rugby, or has got sore heels, then we have prehab rehab cards, and they'll go into the clubhouse and do balance work, resistance work, stretching programs that we've written, and we'll tell them how to do it. Again, if they've done that and they come out and they don't want to do that, or they're wanting to sports lead instead, then they come out and they'll work with the junior coaches and just, you know, help them with the sports leading. Because kids are coming for very much social reasons. So if they're injured, they still want to come. So we facilitate that with the prehab rehab or the option to sports lead, because then they still see their social grouping each week. And that's been very successful. As has something we dared to do this year, was it's a residential. So we took a whole lot of kids down to Woolacombe. It's a very sociable group, the teen group. As I say, we group them by the choice of who they want to train with. We tried doing elite versus social. So elite runners and athletes and a recreational group. But it's not necessarily your friend that wants to compete with you. So they come to train with their friends, but they might be competing athletes and their friends are recreational athletes. So they train together. That's been very successful. There's lots of variety. As I've shown you, we do field tests, the bleep tests, etc. to measure. We introduced an under-13 academy because we felt our year sixes who were moving into the teen academy in year 7. In the first week of September, they were just too young, and they affected the sociability of our teen academy that had year 10s and 11s in it. So our year 6s and year 7s from school make up an under-13 teen academy. Year 6s like to beat year 7s. Year 7s don't want to be beaten by year 6s. It's a great little social group of young athletes who are not quite sassy teenagers yet, but have got all that energy. It's worked really well as a social group to deliver to as a coach. So we've not got 11-year-olds training with 14-year-olds, which has worked really well. I think I've mentioned that with our teenagers, we do prehab rehab and some sports leading. So I'll move on to the next slide, which uses that phrase recreational or participating athletes versus performing athletes. A large percentage of our club, as I've said, 67% are not affiliated but come every single week. And in so doing, they've paid their fees. So if as a coach you don't want an athlete in your club if they won't compete, there's some subs there that could go to your club to buy more equipment, coach education. So I think in accepting, however you want to call it, a recreational participation athlete, you're supporting your club. I think a lot of these athletes, as I've said, become coaches. So although you've got an athlete that is enjoying fitness, they might not have that extra edge for competition, but they might have that ability to be an official or a coach. So keep them in the club, keep them in understanding athletics, so they can feed back into your coaching framework and your club framework. And I would say don't make any assumptions that just because somebody isn't athletic at a certain age, they won't become athletic. And just because somebody has an ability doesn't mean that they'll stick at the sport. Mental resilience is just as important as physical resilience. And a lot of kids might come with ability but have the wrong attitude and then drop out of the sport because they're not always winning. So going back to that task motivation theory, I think assuming that just because an athlete doesn't have an ability is not a good reason to not allow them to compete or not encourage them to stay training. We rotate our coaches around athletes. I think a coach wanting to only select athletes they want to coach for, I would say is quite egotistical, and I'm happy to be challenged on that. I don't think I can decide which athletes want me to coach them, as much as I don't believe I could pick the athletes that are going to succeed and stay with me. I think you could make a good rule of thumb, but not definitively. So I happened to be listening to a Radio 5 recording last week and listened to Eddie Jones after he'd come back from the World Cup. And they asked him what the difference was in his approach with the team in the latter years. And he just said openly a couple of weeks ago, I stopped obsessing about winning. And not coaching well. And he focused on how he could coach better to improve his team. And I thought that was a really interesting observation from another sport. And then I looked up why we should be having people competing. And as you can see, the very framework of the Olympic motto from Baron Pierre de Coubertin was that it's the taking part, and it's the conquering and fight. It's not about conquering, but fighting well. And I think if we are true to our sport and our ethos of coaching, then we need to embrace all athletes that want to come and either participate or perform. So I had quite a number of issues that in doing this webinar made me look at myself and address issues within our club. We don't have all the answers for our own club, so I don't even purport to have any answers or even responses to every club out there. But I think if we all share, whether it's the web designer to help you with online or the training cards I use that we've created, I'm happy to share absolutely anything that's worked for us in case it works for you. But there's a number of things there you can probably read that we want to improve on our challenges for our coaches and also for our club going forward.
Brilliant. It's 5 to 8, everyone. What I do just want to do is show a couple of videos. I think someone asked a question or someone made a comment earlier about the benefit of this approach to the members, to the athletes. So I'm going to hope this works and I hope you can see it, but I've got a couple of YouTube video clips that Rachel took from some of her athletes. So bear with me and hopefully you can see this.
Hello, Team Academy. These are some of our older members in the squad. In particular, Caitlin is here. She's been here since our very first session nearly 9 years ago. So the question to you all, the England Athletics once answered is, if you're coming to this club, what is about this club you like? Friends? The coaches? Friendly coaches, yeah? What about the sessions themselves? What do you like? How is it inclusive of everybody? About good to like do it. So you don't have to be good. When you say you don't have to be good, what do you mean?
You don't have to be the first person across the line because it still works for you. Everyone works the same.
Okay. So what's your favourite session, Joe? What's your favourite thing to do at club? Relay. Millie, have you got a favourite? Running in circles. You like endurance, don't you? Okay. So what's your favourite aspect about club that you don't have at any other club?
There's no pressure to compete if you don't want to.
Okay. So why are you here if you're not competing? Fitness, social. Okay. Thanks very much, guys.
One more video, just to quickly show you.
So hi, it's Wednesday night and this is Amber. So Amber, how long have you been coming to club?
5 years.
5 years. And do you do many other sports?
I do squash, rugby and athletics.
Okay, so you've been coming to athletics for 5 years. Have you done any competitions?
No.
Okay, but you keep coming. So what's good about coming to club?
Mainly just like the variety of different sports and like the social aspect of it.
What's the social aspect? What's good about that?
Like, you make so many new friends because you're always with the same people and then people are constantly coming.
So having lots of friends around you and doing lots of stuff, lots of different stuff. Okay, well thanks very much for your help today. So hi, it's Wednesday night and this is Amber. So Amber, how long have you been coming to club?
5 years.
5 years. And do you do many other sports?
I do squash, rugby and athletics.
Okay, so you've been coming to athletics for 5 years. Have you done any competitions?
Struggling, everyone, just to get this video to stop, so bear with me a second.
Mainly like the variety of different sports and like the social aspect of it.
What's the social aspect? What's good about that?
You make so many new friends because you're always with the same people and then people are constantly coming.
So having lots of friends around you and doing lots of stuff, lots of different stuff. Okay, well thanks very much for your help today. So hi, it's Wednesday night and this is Amber. So
Hello,
Team
Academy.
5 years. And do you do many other sports?
I do squash, rugby and athletics.
Right, hopefully we've stopped that now. Sorry about that, slight technical hitch. I knew at some point I'd probably fail miserably. We've had a question come in just about basically saying that it's really thought-provoking and embedding the model that Rachel has just talked about into a traditional club that's been established for however many years is probably going to be quite challenging. And asking whether or not it's something that we should be braver about, dismantling what we're currently doing. Then a follow-up question really, which was about, is it the model that England Athletics wants to move to? I guess from my perspective on behalf of England Athletics, we're not saying that this is a better model than anything else. We're not saying it's the right approach. I think what I probably should have said at the start of this is that, I guess from Rachel's perspective, this club was set up from scratch, so absolutely it's going to be easier to embed some of the models and some of the practices into a club that's set up from scratch. I guess I and England Athletics just wanted to share with you, A, the model, and B, just some of the elements that go to make that up. So some of the approaches to putting together the training program, the planning that goes behind it, the website, the online bookings, payments, etc., all goes into making up the overall model. And we absolutely realise that's not going to be right for every club. There might be none of that you can take away. There might be some of it. Some of you might think, well, actually, we might want to try all of it. But yeah, we're not saying that anything is right or what any other club is currently doing is wrong. It was just trying to share what other people are doing, for food for thought provoking. So if that's what this has been, then brilliant. It's 8 o'clock. I've got one more question coming in, so I will just relay this question and talk through it. Following that, what I will say is I will email everyone, so you'll have my email address, so I can pass any questions on to Rachel direct, and we will aim to respond as quickly as possible. If any of the questions sort of end up becoming more detailed in terms of what the responses require, then I will endeavour to sort of link you up with your club support manager who covers your part of the world if you aren't already in contact with them. Rachel just wants to say something while Ingrid's question is coming through.
Yeah, there's a question about should we be braver in dismantling what we're currently doing. No, please don't dismantle it. Don't dismantle it. The title of this webinar was about progressive and supportive coaching. So it's about progression and change. So what you've got has worked, but how does it need to change for you and your club, in your environment, from any of the aspects of this that England Athletics can support you with? So I wouldn't use the word dismantling. Being braver, yes. Changing, yes. Be progressive. Yeah, absolutely. You can have the slides sent through. I don't own any of. Well, I wrote it. I'm happy to help with anything, Elizabeth. I started this athletics club because I wanted to coach. I wanted to build something that could be sustainable and repeatable, whether it was me or anybody else. That's my goal. So if, not that I'm saying it's the answer for everything, but just where you could build something that was sustainable first and repeatable. And whatever your model is of that any of this has helped, absolutely. Happy to help.
I think Ingrid's typing, has been typing for a while. Ingrid, I'm going to try, see if I can get you off of mute and you can actually speak if you want, if that's easier.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the excellent presentation comment. It is a vision. I have to say it is a vision. It's even bigger than what I have at the minute. I would like to think that coaches will support each other across the country and that England Athletics will support us in doing that.
Look, thanks everyone. I'm realising that there are a couple of people typing, but I realised that we said we'd finish by 8. It's just after 8. I will pass the slides on. I will pass my email address on. So if anyone's got any more comments, questions, etc., please do pass them on. What I'm going to do just quickly before I close the webinar down is quickly pass on a survey. So if you can just take 2 minutes to fill the survey in, that